It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
We almost didn't make it. We had a major technological collapse. But our friend Bob Mack, who's one of the great engineers of all time, Westwood One, came to the rescue. So we want to thank our friend Bob and everybody else who worked with him, Christian, Rich, the whole gang. Before we jump into stuff, and there's a lot to jump into, from time to time, actually many times, I like to provide a sort of an intellectual or what's a better way? A context for things that are going on that I think about, that I write notes to myself, typically throughout the weekend. And that gives, I think, more insight into what's taking place in this country right now. And one of the things is that, hold on, let's see here. The district court's not lack merit appointments throughout the special counsel brief. Okay, that's their brief in an appeal. I'm not worried about that. We'll deal with that later. I thought it may be a court decision. All right. In any event, I think it's important because I get questions here. I get questions when I bump into people that always start with the word why. Why? Why don't people see what we see? Why do people think this way? Why do people vote this way? And the word why is the word that draws the attention of philosophers, scholars, intellectuals. That is, to try and figure out why. Or just people who are intrigued, people who are conscientious. Why? Why? So, all last night and this morning I was thinking to myself, among other things, this Democrat convention, where they talk about this word freedom, and yet the whole convention was largely about identity politics. The speakers were largely chosen because of their identities. The speakers were largely chosen because what they said about race, what they said about sexuality. Almost all of them talked about race. Why? Why is that? Why is the Democrat Party so focused on groupism, on fraternity? You and I, we're focused on individuality, a colorblind society. That's what liberty means to us. You look at the Declaration of Independence, what does it talk about? There's not a word in there about race. It's about natural law, natural rights, God-given. God-given to each individual. Unalienable rights, not given to groups based on physical features or their faith or whatever it is. Unalienable rights given to each human being. Each human being has their own value, their own worth. But the Democrat Party doesn't see things that way. In fact, there's organizations that represent different ethnic groups, different racial groups, different religious groups. They don't see things that way either. What's going on? This is very important to understand. I know it's not typical talk radio, but it is typical Mark Levin talk radio. You and I talk about individual liberty, the Constitution, free will, the importance of separation of powers so there's not a concentration of centralized power, the importance of representative government, not little d democracy, so you don't have mobocracy. You don't have mobocracy, so people can't vote by majority to destroy your unalienable rights. The Constitution is a magnificent balance in order to protect the individual. Government doesn't exist to get more powerful, to get more centralized, to rejigger society, or to re-engineer the human person. Government exists to protect the civil society, the social contract. Stick with me. We're more concerned about the protection of the individual, free will, unalienable rights, than the Democrat Party, or even more than the left. Why is that? Why is that? Within the Democrat Party has constructed a political environment that is based on putting people into groups and then trying to unite those groups, whether it's an economic group, a racial group, an ethnic group, whatever it is. Group identity. Now, I don't think they do this because they're particularly scholarly or they're particularly brilliant. I think they do this because it works for them. But I'm going to go below surface level. Why does it work for them? Why does it work for them? It seems that so many of the people at that convention, speaking at that convention, and so many people that we know who identify as Democrats or leftists, they don't talk about individual liberty. In fact, they attack the constitutional construct. They attack the American federal. Well, what is it? What is it that demands their loyalty, that draws their attention? They're even willing to accept levels of authoritarianism and paternalism that you and I are not. Why? Why? Why are they willing to surrender their individualism? CRT rather than a colorblind society. I think I got this figured out. You and I find our security in individualism. You and I want the freedom to use our labor, intellectual and physical labor, in ways that make us feel successful, accomplished, motivated. As an individual, we contribute to society, don't get me wrong. We want to be able to do what we need to be able to do to fulfill our lives and to fulfill our responsibilities to our family. To our family. And in order to do that, we understand the importance of a constitutional system, of a representative system, of free will, of individual liberty, of treating people based on merit and substance, not based on physicality or faith or whatever it is that they're associated with. Not true on the other side. Not true on the left. Not true with the Democrat Party, the political vessel through which they operate. It's group identity. Group identity is where many people, even in this country, feel safe, feel secure. Group identity is how they interpret liberty. It's not really liberty, but that's how they interpret it. The power of their group. The power of their group. Liberty is redefined, wrongly, are believed to be a group power. There's power in group. Black power is an example. And so, individual liberty is not as important as group power. Am I making sense, Mr. Producer? The higher form of attachment is to the group, whatever group you identify with. You don't feel secure as an individual. You feel secure as part of a group that has power. That, I think, is the crux of the matter. You have an identity, not as an individual. Look, maybe you're not doing so great on the job. Maybe you have issues. Maybe you don't have issues. Maybe you've been mistreated. So you feel power and identity and even a perverse form of liberty as part of a group. Even if that group, even if the Democrat Party is denying you of individual liberties, is centralizing decision-making in Washington, D.C., with politicians and bureaucrats you don't even know, many you may not even like. But you feel more secure. You actually feel free in a bizarre way with the less freedom that you have and the less freedom that the guy across the street has. And so you have a much higher tolerance for paternalism, a much higher tolerance for authoritarianism. It's okay if they destroy separation of powers. That doesn't mean anything to you. It's okay if they destroy the independence of the Supreme Court. It's okay if the government hands out health care, if the government sets prices and so forth and so on. You're part of the group. And you have a high level of tolerance for group decision-making because the group is your security. The group is your perverse view of freedom. So I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. Doesn't matter what she thinks. Doesn't matter what she says. Doesn't matter what she believes. She's part of the group. And the Democrat Party knows it. So what do they tout? Do they tout her policies? No. Do they tout her substance? No. Do they tout her experience? No. They tout that she's the first black woman nominee of a party and would be the first black woman president. And so, if you're of this mindset, that's enough. I don't need to know where she stands on the border. I don't care. She's going to protect my group. And by that, by the way, I don't just mean black or female. I mean Democrat. My group is going to be empowered. The Democrat Party, I'm going to be empowered as a Democrat. I'm going to be empowered as a woman. I'm going to be empowered as an African American. All or part of it or something like that. I don't think that way. I don't think that way. I look at Bernie Sanders, he's Jewish, I say, what an a-hole that guy is. Complete jerk. Many Republicans, I say the same thing. That guy's a jerk. I don't care. I'm not supporting that guy. Mitt Romney, he's a loser. Whatever. So it appears to me that half or close to half of the country has a perverse view of liberty. That they view liberty as group power, as identity power, as power in numbers. They don't view liberty as a matter of individualism or free will. They don't much care. People who believe in groups and the Constitution and the founding doesn't really matter because liberty is redefined as a belief in the power of the group, the identity of the group. Look at Hamas that gets elected by the Palestinians, brutalizes their own people, kills them, starves them. But it's the group. It's the group.
Mark Levin.
making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
You see the Navy is sidelining 17 ships because we don't have enough sailors? It's unbelievable what's happening to this country. We already have a Navy that's well under 300 ships. 30% of our Navy is now in the Middle East. What if China attacks Taiwan right now? I mean, this is just unbelievable. This is what the left does. They deplete us. They deplete us of strategic oil. They deplete us of an industrial base. They deplete our military. They deplete the cops. They deplete our money. This is who they are. You know, this weekend we had two very, very important shows on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And one of the important guests, we have four, they were all important, but one was Joey Piscatelli. Joey Piscatelli, as a young man, young kid, attended a Catholic high school. And he was molested by a priest. You know, there's one guy out there, I don't even remember his name, Catholic League, he goes on, you're not allowed to say anything. You know, if there was a rabbi who molested a kid, you think I'd be defending any of this? No. I'd be disgusted by it. But I ignore him. Again, his name I don't remember because he's irrelevant, at least to me. So Piscatelli ultimately brought a civil suit and ultimately won, either through a settlement or through a court decision, I don't recall. But I want you to listen to what he has to say, because this directly impacts Kamala Harris, her reputation as a tough prosecutor. And this is one of the reasons why none of this is being on CNN or MSNBC. And to my knowledge, I don't believe any of the news platforms at Fox have used it either. But it was very important for me to talk about this. Very important. I don't believe it was in Media Matters or any of the Sunday shows. No, of course not. But tell me if you think this is relevant. Joey Piscatelli on Life, Liberty, and Levin on Saturday. Cut 14, go. We have with us Joey Piscatelli, who I learned about just by reading old news stories. Joey Piscatelli is a general contractor, but more than that, he's been a leader for 20 years with Survivors Network of those abused by priests. Joey Piscatelli, I can see the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. You're a man from the San Francisco area. You've had experience with Kamala Harris as DA, as Attorney General, as Senator, and so forth. Tell the American people a little bit about your story and about your experience in trying to draw the attention of Kamala Harris.
Well, I first filed a lawsuit against the church for being molested as a child. And the priest who had molested me was a priest from San Francisco. And I went to San Francisco with other victims before Kamala Harris was DA. And we talked to the district attorney named Terrence Hellinon. And Terrence Hellinon had accumulated files, lots of files on sex abusers in the church that he had subpoenaed and gathered through investigations. And he was going after them full force. Kamala Harris beat him in early 2004 as the new district attorney. So the files were in her care then. So we immediately started contacting her, asking her if she'd release the names in those files or release the complaints that were in the files, because there were a number of people who had filed suit against predators, and we wanted them held accountable. She ignored us. And we started protesting at her office, and she kept ignoring us. The press started contacting her and saying, are you going to release these files? What are you doing about these predators, etc.? And she ignored them. This went on for a long time, and my suit was going to court jury trial. So the priest who had molested me was in San Francisco working as a pastor at a church and school with access to children. So I wrote her again and said, I'm actively suing this man for child molestation, and he's with kids now, and so are a number of other clergy and teachers who have molested kids. You need to do something about this. And she kept ignoring it. So they kept the priest in ministry, and a number of us would protest at her office in San Francisco. We passed out flyers, virtually begging her to do something. She kept ignoring us. The press contacted her and said, "Why aren't you releasing these files and these names?" And her answer was that she was protecting the victims. Well, I'm one of those victims, and she wasn't protecting the victims because the victims' names are redacted from the files and the claims. The only names that appear are those that are the predators. She was shielding them in our eyes, and we couldn't understand why. One thing, she wasn't prosecuting them, she wasn't investigating them, she wasn't releasing their names, and she kept shielding them, and we couldn't understand that.
And nobody can understand that. And she won't be questioned about it at any of the debates either, because the moderators won't do it. Will they? You know, the job of the press is to expose all of this, to challenge the candidates, to question them. The problem is they've been all over Trump. They've lied about Trump. They've smeared Trump. They've character assassinated Trump. They've gone after some things in his background, some of the things that are factual. He's dealt with it. He's had to deal with it over and over again. But her, she doesn't have to address anything. Now, this is a scandal. This is a scandal, whether some people like it or not. It's a scandal, and I'm not covering up pedophilia. I don't care who does it. So here you have pedophilia. Here you have victims. Here you have victims who bring lawsuits, who are ready to put everything on the line, who are willing to prove their cases. And Kamala Harris blows them off. Jake Tapper doesn't ask any questions about that. Kirsten Welker doesn't ask any questions about that. None. John Carl doesn't ask any questions about this. George Stephanopoulos covers it with a pillow, smothers it. In fact, none of the media have asked about this. None of the media have done a report on this. None of the media have interviewed Joey Piscatelli. I did. Nobody else. Why? Media everywhere have ignored it. Why? People I know in the media. Why? Why are they ignoring this? You don't have to run my clips. Talk to them yourself. Seems to me this is very important. She's the big prosecutor, and she should answer for this. Crickets everywhere. Crickets everywhere. Pretty shocking, don't you think? It's disgusting. She said at the convention, and I don't doubt this, that her friend, I think it was Wanda, that the reason she got into the business of being a prosecutor is because Wanda was abused by her stepfather. But she didn't mention Joe Piscatelli or the scores of others. Well, she was a prosecutor who could have done something about this. And he points out after the statute of limitations ran, they went back and said, please give us the files. You heard him. Because we're going to bring civil suits because you didn't do anything. And she wouldn't give them the files. She lied. Well, we don't want to reveal the victims. As he pointed out, they were redacted. They were blocked out. And the prosecutor who she defeated for DA, he was ready to go. Piscatelli said he was ready to go 100 miles an hour. She killed it. Now, it seems to me this is worth being pursued by fake Tapper, by Kristen Welker, by John Carl, by Maggot Haberman, by all the other losers. But they won't. They're going to protect her, Kamala. Kamala says now she doesn't want to have the debate rules that Biden had, that Trump agreed to. Now she wants to change them.
Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
More polls coming out. Bottom line is it's tied, the race, according to these polls. That's what it is. A little up here, a little down there. I wasn't here last evening. President Trump invited me to interview him about something very special that you're going to find out about in a moment. I interviewed President Trump for 2 hours straight, Mr. Producer. And this Saturday, this Sunday, special Labor Day weekend editions of Life, Liberty, and Levin. Now, you've seen him interviewed before, but I haven't interviewed him since March of 2023. And he and I have excellent chemistry. He has said it himself. And the reason is I'll ask a question, I'll let him finish the answer. And we get into all kinds of subjects you might anticipate, of course. But I also asked him if he received a call or a note after he was shot from Kamala Harris, Mr. Producer. I asked him if he received a note or a call from George W. Bush. We talked at length about the big issues and family and so forth. And you know, you can learn a lot when you keep your mouth shut. You just listen. And unfortunately, too many interviewers haven't figured that out. Now, I hope you'll watch it. Now, it's Labor Day weekend. If you don't think you'll be around, go ahead and set your DVRs now. If I don't mention it, nobody else will, which is really too bad. So we did, that's where we were last evening. He couldn't do it any earlier. I hate to miss the radio show. But he is hustling. He is out there. He is busy. I don't know how he does it. And literally just before he sat down for our talk, our discussion. And by the way, that's what it was. It was just a discussion, you know, with the other people in the media, the other press, I should say. I'm not press, but them. It's, well, what do you mean by dictator? What do you mean? I don't do that. I'm not interested in that. And so he's able to speak and express his views about a number of things. But right before he entered the room and sat down for the discussion, he'd been indicted again in Washington, D.C. by Jack Smith. And we talk about that. And we talk about other things as well. I see a chyron on Fox. Harris closes gap in several key swing states. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been through many presidential elections. This time, in 1980, Ronald Reagan was trailing Carter. It's just impossible to know right now what's what. It just is. And so you keep plugging ahead. And we're going to talk about what's being done to this country by the Democrats, the media, and Kamala Harris, of course. Anyway, so these will be special editions of Life, Liberty, and Levin. We have to trim it just a little bit. We're going to do everything we can not to edit the meat of the interviews, because I don't believe in that anyway. Just for this Labor Day weekend, it's an exclusive with President Trump. There'll be no other interviews, I guess, until next week. And as I said, it was wide-ranging. You'll learn a great deal about the president. And yes, we did talk about the day we're shot, but I dressed in a little bit of a different way. How Melania got word, the reaction of his kids. So we get into family as well as the other issues. So I know you're going to like it, particularly you in this audience. And spread the word, honestly, because the more people who watch it, the better. The more people who watch it, the better. Because they'll see him. It doesn't do anything for me, so they'll see him. You know, there was a piece in the New York Times the other day by Rich Lowry, the head muckety-muck at National Review. And it's getting a lot of attention, and it should. It is, in fact, a very intelligent piece. Now, he's got his little shots in there against Trump, as everybody seems to. But when you overlook it, because there's not much of that, he's right. And what he says in this New York Times piece as a guest opinion writer is, look, the problem with Kamala Harris is character. It's her character. She lies. She flip-flops. She's deceiving the American people. She's hiding from the American people. We don't even know if her flip-flops are honest. They're likely not. And I'll put it my way, she's a chameleon. So, yeah, she's a radical leftist, but she's a chameleon for purpose of elections. He says it's important to raise all these issues, but it's more important to link them to character. And he explains this whole border czar issue. She doesn't care what happens on the border. She doesn't care about the consequences of what happens to kids, to others. She doesn't care about what happens to the women on the border, the drugs coming into the country. She doesn't care, and she doesn't act like she cares. She just doesn't care. She doesn't care about inflation and the impact on the middle class in particular. She just doesn't care. And she's never cared. As vice president, she never said anything about it. She defended Bidenomics. Now she claims bread's too expensive and so forth and so on. That's obvious to everybody. All she's doing is telling us what we already know. But she doesn't care. She has no plans to do anything about it. In fact, she wants to spend more. And he points out this is a huge character flaw. This is a huge character flaw. He talks further. When you look at all these issues, nationalizing health care, if you will, taking health care, private health care from people who like it. She doesn't care. So what? Eliminating fracking, which would choke energy production in America. The consequences you can only imagine. To jobs, to what happens in the winter, the production of electricity even, and so forth. And so, she doesn't care. And that's a very, very important point. It's a character issue. And he points out it should not only be brought up, it should be repeated. It should be stated over and over and over again that Kamala Harris does not care if people go without gasoline. She doesn't care if people go without food. She doesn't care if people can't pay their bills. She's immune to it. She doesn't care about the crime and the destruction that result from the open borders. And so now she just lies about it. Or you might say flip-flop, but she just lies about it. And her tax policy, she doesn't care if it destroys jobs. So what? She doesn't care if wages are stagnant while inflation is going up. Doesn't even talk about it. And I think he's very much onto something here. Very much onto something. Kamala Harris and this guy, Tampon Tim, they're trying to make themselves into likable figures. People who care. Very ambiguous, very amorphous. And they shouldn't be able to get away with that because they're nothing like that. They've done a lot of harm to a lot of people. And they'll do a lot of harm to a lot more people should, God forbid, they win. So the issues are important, but he points out, tie it to her character. I agree with this. I mean, the title of his piece is Trump Can Win on Character. And also look at the juxtaposition. I would go further a little bit than Rich, and you write a column, you can't fit it all in. She doesn't care what happened. in the surrender of Afghanistan. She doesn't care what happened to those 13 soldiers who died tragically and horribly. She just doesn't care. She doesn't care what will happen to the state of Israel should they surrender to Hamas and Iran and Hezbollah and the Houthis. She doesn't care. And it's true. It also has the benefit of being true. And as she's trying to avoid all these positions she took in 2019 and 2020 without explanation, he points out you can explain that she's an opportunist. She's a chameleon. My word, but he would say the same, I think. That she'll change her statement to deceive the voters on anything and everything. That she has true beliefs, that they're so radical to the left of Bernie Sanders. But she doesn't want those true beliefs to be on the ballot. She doesn't want you voting on those. So she's I would argue, she's the most dishonest candidate to ever run for office. Ever. Ever. And so I think this is a very smart and perceptive point by Lowry. Link it back to character. She doesn't care about the 13 who died. She doesn't care about all the mayhem, murder, rape, the drug cartels on the border. If she cared about it, she would have done something about it. She doesn't care that the nation is nearly bankrupt. She doesn't care that interest rates are through the roof, that cars and homes are unaffordable. She just doesn't care. I agree.
Mark Levin. The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the so-called Bipartisan Immigration Act, or Border Security Act, was no such thing. I'm going to give you 5 reasons, and I will post them later. Under the bill, the Kamala Harris says she will sign on day 1, which the Republicans rejected. It would enshrine in federal law catch and release. Catch and release is the reason we have millions of illegal aliens in America. Donald Trump had stay in Mexico. Then we will adjudicate, vet, and make a determination. Biden-Harris, they signed an executive order eliminating that. And so we have catch and release, where our poor Border Patrol, if they even are able, they catch the person and then they release them into our country. They could be criminals if they don't know who they are. They could be terrorists. They could be murderers. They could be MS-13. They could be that Venezuelan vile gang. So catch and release was codified under the bill that Kamala Harris says she will sign on day 1. What else? It automatically gave work permits to illegal aliens. You step your foot into this country, get a work permit, you can take a job from an American citizen. Work permits will become a statutory right, a federal legal right under this so-called bipartisan bill. It's not today, except for Biden's executive order. It would be part of the law. Ready for the next one? It's amazing how the media haven't told you any of this. Number 3, American taxpayers would be forced to pay for lawyers for illegal aliens who would use those lawyers to fight deportation, which could go on for years and years. They would get free lawyers. Do you have free lawyers, America? Do you have, Mr. Producer? So illegal aliens would get free lawyers paid for by you, the taxpayer of America. That would be a matter of federal law under the Harris-Biden immigration law that she says, I'll sign on day 1. Number 4, 5,000 illegal aliens a day would be permitted under the law. So you're allowing illegal aliens as a matter of federal law. It would be enshrined in the federal code. That's 1.8 million known illegal aliens every year. The gotaways, of course, they can't count. They can only estimate because they got away. But 1.8 million per year. That means in 10 years' time, 18 million illegal aliens. In addition to the gotaways. So you're talking 25, 30 million aliens, mostly illegal, in a 10-year period. That would be a matter of federal law. Federal law. Number 5, billions and billions of your taxpayers' money under this law would go to sanctuary cities that remain sanctuary cities to this day. Specifically go to sanctuary cities for the purpose of helping them deal with the illegal aliens who are attracted to these cities because they're sanctuary cities. In other words, Democrat cities. And billions of dollars would go to non-government organizations, these so-called nonprofit groups that promote illegal immigration. Billions to those groups. That's why this detestable Senator Christopher Murphy of Connecticut said in so many words that the border never is closed under the bill. And there's another provision under the bill, just so you know, that a president can waive all these caps and limitations if he notifies Congress. So it's a bill that does everything and does nothing. You keep hearing them say, but there's $600 million to finish the wall. It takes billions of dollars to finish the wall. That money was already put aside. Donald Trump went into court after court. He litigated against these groups. He litigated against the Democrats. He won. There were even some conservatives and Republicans who rejected what he did. I defended it. That way they can say, there's $600 million to finish the wall. Why don't you just finish the wall now? Just do it. So you have these other points, too. So why do they keep flying in illegal aliens? Almost 1 million of them so far, and they did it under the cover of dark. You and I didn't know about it until like 4 to 6 months ago. There's no requirement that they keep doing it, but they keep doing it. Why did they give out an app to illegal aliens all over the world, or would-be illegal aliens, foreigners all over the world, citizens of other countries? If you want to come to the country, this is what you do. You send us a message on the app, and you come through the port of entry. Well, no wonder illegal immigration is down, Mr. Producer. You come through the port of entry, you're not counted as an illegal alien. So there's all this sleazy stuff going on, as you can imagine. When something doesn't make sense and your gut says they got to be lying, they're lying. So catch and release becomes a mandate under federal law. Work permits, a mandate under federal law. They're not a mandate now, they're executive orders. Taxpayer-funded lawyers for illegal aliens. Imagine the cost. That would become codified as a matter of federal law. 5,000 illegal aliens a day, 1.8 million a year that we know of would be a permissible number under federal law. Billions and billions to sanctuary cities, billions and billions to pro-illegal alien non-government organizations. And if it became law, it would never get undone. Do you want to know why, America? It doesn't take 60 votes to pass a law unless there's a filibuster, of course. To undo a law, it can also be filibustered. In other words, you would need 60 votes to undo this law. Donald Trump comes in and says, no, I want Wade in Mexico. we're not giving work permits to illegal aliens. No, we're not going to fund their lawyers. No, I don't agree with up to 5,000 illegal aliens a day, almost 2 million a year. Sorry, no. I don't want billions and billions going to sanctuary cities and pro-illegal alien NGOs. No, no, no. Well, you have to. Why? Because it's a matter of law. That's why Donald Trump opposed it. That's why the entire Republican caucus in the House opposed it. That's why virtually all Republican senators opposed it. That's why this was negotiated in secret. And so when they keep saying, bipartisan, that bipartisan bill, we could have gotten a wall, we could have, they are liars. Liars. It is important now that Republicans go on television and radio, particularly if they're members of Congress, know what the hell they're talking about. These are 5 very, very important points. Very, very important points. Would you support this bill, Mr. Producer? Hell no. And the point is, the Democrats do. And she said she'll sign it on day one. I want you to think about that. And, to tie it to Larry's point, which is very important. Kamala Harris doesn't care about all the women and children who are sold into sex slavery on the border. She doesn't care about all the fentanyl coming across. She doesn't care about the criminals coming in, MS-13, the Venezuelan gangs. She doesn't care about any of it. Or she would have done something about it. Or she would have done something about it. All the consequences, all the horrors, all the monsters set loose into this country. She doesn't care. Or she would have done something about it. Oh, I'm not the border czar, but you're the vice president of the United States. Well, now I support a wall. You don't care. It's still going on. Right now in your administration, Kamala, it's still going on right now. And you don't care. You don't care about the middle class struggling over inflation, the cost of gasoline and electricity, the cost of food, because you haven't done anything about it. You haven't done anything about it. You run the executive branch. You run the Senate. If you want to do something about it, the Republicans are there to help, but you won't. You haven't done anything about it. You haven't fixed it. You don't care. You talk about women's rights. You've destroyed women's sports. You took Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. Effectively, it's an education amendment in 1972, but nonetheless. What have you done? Nothing. But destroy it. You support men in women's sports. You're destroying athletic scholarship for girls to go to colleges. You're destroying women's sports generally. So you don't care about them. You don't care about them. You don't care about little kids having sex operations without parental involvement. You just pick for your running mate, Tampon Tim. That's what the law says in Minnesota. You don't believe in parental rights. You don't believe in parental involvement, even on how they raise their own kids. Even sex change operations. You don't care about parents. You don't care about little kids. That's the point. Character. She has no character. She's hiding out. So explain it. Use the issues and explain. She doesn't give a damn. You lose your private health care, you're forced into a government-run system. 42% of Canadians, I just looked this up, would go elsewhere, the United States if possible, for medical care. 42%. The number's even higher in Britain. Well, why would we import that into our system? Long waiting lines, people die while they have these horrendous diseases or conditions. Because she's an ideologue. She doesn't give a damn. She's not going to go through government health care. None of them do. They always cut the line, or they have a way out. They buy their way out. Just keep this in mind. The woman has no character. She doesn't care. She doesn't care what's happening to you.
Mark Levin.
we're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
I thought President Trump gave a fantastic speech just now in Potterville, Michigan. It's so many of the important issues. And he does it in a compelling way, an intriguing way, a funny way, an entertaining way. And I think that's what drives Washington nuts. Don't they all look like they're constipated, Mr. Producer? You know, with their stiff back and their sliding in their seats and everything's in place and all the rest of it. I just feel like they don't know what to make of him. They don't know what to think of him. Same with the media. And so they attack. Little spurts of this interview with CNN are getting out now. It sounds to me like it was a stupid interview. I'm just being honest with you. I'll give you one example that they put out there, CNN. Let's take a listen to this. Cut 2, go.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information?
Stop right there. What she should have done is immediately played some clips or quoted her, rather than giving her multiple choice answers. Didn't you think that you're giving her multiple choice answers, Rich? Did you think you have more experience now? Oh, yeah, that's the one. Why do you have to do any of that? You've changed your positions fundamentally. Fracking, no fracking. Border, and no border, border. Defund the police, don't defund the police. Why not that? Go ahead.
About the information, is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy?
So let me ask you something, folks. Is that a softball? Rich, is that a softball? I mean, shouldn't it be you take these fundamentally principled positions and then you fundamentally reverse your principled positions? Why did you reverse yourself on fracking? Why did you reverse your... And just go down the list. How hard is that to do? So I don't care what anybody else says. This is a stupid question, and I think it gets dumber as it goes on. Anyway, go ahead.
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy...
Now, let's stop right there. You know she's sat around with her so-called brain trust, which has an IQ collectively of negative 74, to come up with an answer. They're going to mention to you, Kamala, or is it Kamala? Anyway, they're going to mention to you that you've changed your positions. So here's what we should say. So they settle on something. This is just not a tough interview. It's just not. Go ahead.
Decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that.
See what I mean? She didn't really focus in, Dana Bash. She gave her an opportunity to give a short filibuster speech. Okay? Here's what I stand for, but climate change... But no. You talked about eliminating fracking. Your administration doesn't approve oil pipelines. The lowest level in known history of drilling on government lands. You see what I mean, America? Go ahead.
We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed.
See what I mean? Open borders. ICE is like the Ku Klux Klan. Remember all this? Don't call them illegal aliens. They're going to get Medicare, Social Security, if they're old enough. In any event, they'll get government health care. This is ridiculous. Go ahead.
the Attorney General of California, prosecuting violations of a massive illegal guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
Yeah, but you're Vice President of the United States, and you say you have no responsibility for it when you actually have now control over the decision-making with respect to the border. Why were you so tough, you say, as Attorney General? And you're missing in action. You're AWOL when you're Vice President of the United States. You don't even accept the borders are title. Okay, fine. But you're Vice President of the United States. You didn't do anything. And you haven't done anything. Well, the bipartisan, but you're flying 1 million people a year into the country. You gave people apps so they come through the port of entry so you don't have to record them as illegal aliens. This was a slobberingly stupid interview. Just by this one exchange. Go ahead. It's amazing, don't you think, Rich? It's so stupid. Yeah, this is the one they released, CNN. Good point. This is the one they released before to try and attract everybody's interest. Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, look at this. Fascinating. No, it's stupid. And Dana Bash gave her a pass. It's not like when Dana Bash questions Republicans, like J.D. Vance. Nothing like that. You can tell the different tone, the approach. Basically a multiple choice question. Didn't really hone in. Didn't really laser in, if you will, on the fundamental differences of her position and the consequences of what's taking place on the border as of right now. What is that? And so this is what's going to happen. Trump's speech today was excellent. He really honed in on her. He really attacked her for not supporting the middle class. He really laid into her agenda. But then again, most of the media didn't cover it. Most of the media didn't cover it. So when we have people on media saying he needs to do this, he needs to do that. That's perfectly fine. Supporters, people want him to win. But if nobody's covering it, nobody's hearing it. And now they negotiated for a debate under Biden where there would be no open mics. When one candidate is speaking, the other one's mic is shut. Now they're demanding the mics be open because everybody knows Kamala wants to be able to say, excuse me, I'm speaking. Excuse me. I'm speaking. And you know why? Because that's been poll tested. When she pulled that stunt on Mike Pence, and you can say what you want, but he's a very kind man. He's a very even-headed guy, and there he is debating her. He didn't raise his voice. He wasn't interrupting her. She did it to him. And here's why. Here's what they poll tested. After that exchange with Pence, the vast majority of men thought Pence didn't do anything wrong. The vast majority of women thought he did. You got it? That's what she's playing to. That's all she cares about. It's not about substance at all. She says her values haven't changed. I actually agree with that. She is a Marxist. She just hired somebody today, an Arab American. She just hired somebody today who has viciously and vilely attacked, quote-unquote, Zionists and Zionism. I've told you, all a Zionist is somebody who supports the existence of the state of Israel. You don't have to be Jewish. That's what a Zionist is. But they turn it into, a cuss word. She's hired him. She is surrounded by anti-Semites. She's surrounded by Israel haters. She's surrounded by America haters. She's surrounded by Islamists. She's an Islamist. And she gets this kind of a stupid interview by Dana Bash, who's not up to it. She really doesn't want to be up to it. Again, I want you to hear the question and tell me, is this the way Trump has asked questions? Is this the way J.D. Vance has asked questions? Tom Cotton? Lindsey Graham? Ted Cruz? Is this the way they're treated? Just the question. Cut to, Mr. Producer. Go.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Wow, what a tough question, huh, Rich? It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. It's you get it. Is that how Bob Novak would have asked the question? I'm just asking you folks, seriously? The old timers who knew how to ask questions, is that how they'd ask a question? And she's almost apologetic. Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made? Why don't you tell them some of the changes they have made? Or do this, it's even better yet. All those clips that are out there, play the one clip. Yeah, I'd get rid of health care. And then say, well, now you say you wouldn't. Now, maybe your values are the same, but these are dramatically different positions. So how do you explain it? And then do another one. You know, she has said for decades, has Kamala Harris, that she worked at McDonald's. Hasn't she, Mr. Producer? No, she has said she has. Turns out she didn't. They can't find anything, not a photograph. McDonald's says they don't have any information. Turns out she never worked at McDonald's. Why do these people lie like this? Turns out her running mate was never a coach. He was an assistant coach. Turns out he didn't hold the rank that he has said he's held 1,000 different times to 1,000 different people in 1,000 different ways. When he retired, he was demoted because he wouldn't deploy after 24 years. They just keep lying and lying and lying, and it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And let me show you how this is even treated. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find it. This site called Snopes is a left-wing site. And they claim to be fact-checkers. But then again, that's the nature of tyranny. Harris claims she worked at McDonald's in college. Here's what we know. And she's repeatedly claimed the alleged work experience in an attempt to connect with low-wage workers. She has no connection with low-wage workers. In the 1980s, U.S. Vice Presidential candidate Vice President, worked at McDonald's while she got her undergraduate degree. The rating is research in progress. They can't find a damn thing. Aside from Harris's testimony itself, there's no evidence. A photo, employment record, confirmation from a friend or family member to independently verify the claim. We've reached out to the Harris campaign and McDonald's, and we'll update this report when or if we learn more. She didn't work at McDonald's. I know McDonald's, Mr. Producer. I know their menu. I know where every McDonald's is located within 5 miles of my house. She's no McDonald's employee. No. In August, just of this year, a few weeks ago, her presidential campaign released a new video advertisement in which she claimed she worked at the fast food restaurant, quote, while she got her degree, unquote. Presumably in reference to the undergraduate degree she received from Howard University in 1986. Simple question, which McDonald's did you work at? Which one? A few days later, the Washington Compost reported on the ad, writing Harris is making her stint in the Golden Arches as part of her story. Other outlets, The Slimes, Constipated News Network, Politico, ABC News also repeated the claim, relying on Harris's testimony alone as evidence. Of course. They never looked into it. No. She's a liar. She has her same values, Mr. Producer. She's a liar.